Hey, what's up, y'all? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of Wednesday Wisdom as we jump in, continue our journey through Luke. And so we're going to kick off a new chapter today in Luke 6. Some powerful things I think that we can really apply to our life here. And it starts out in chapter 6, verse 1 on a Sabbath. On a Sabbath. Now, hang on to that. On a Sabbath, while he was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked and ate some of the heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why are you doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath?" So, yet again, last couple of weeks we spent some time, with Jesus, was not so much arguing with the Pharisees, but kind of redirecting them that, hey, look, like y'all are off your old ways. I'll bring some new ways. It's not going to fit. We talked about the wineskins and some of that. And so if you haven't seen it, make sure you go back and check it out. But here in 6, we see some really interesting things. So essentially, here's the scene. The disciples, Jesus, they're walking through a field. Disciples a little hungry. So they pluck some heads of grain and they rub it in their hands. And so that's similar to, on a smaller scale, of what they call threshing, which is how they processed the grain back then. And so the Pharisees, they see him doing this, and instantly they're like kind of the Poindexter with the glasses. We see you doing that. You're not supposed to do that. Like kind of the annoying, really annoying, like tattletales, if you will. The Pharisees are just big tattletales. That's what they are. The Pharisees are tattletales. But anyway, that's the scene. And so, of course, Jesus, he turns it back on them and uses it to be just an incredibly powerful teaching moment. And so here's the issue, is it's the Sabbath. So back in that day, the Jews celebrated Sabbath. And essentially Sabbath was, so God created the world in 6 days, created the universe 6 days, rested for a day. So the Jews believed, well, you can do work, you can do all this stuff for 6 days, but you got to rest on a day. Now, I get that they took it too far. Like they had all kinds of crazy rules on the Sabbath that you couldn't do. Like you couldn't move a chair because if you moved a chair, you stirred the dust, and that would be the same as sweeping. Like, I mean, to the nth degree, like literally, they just pretty much sat there and did nothing on the Sabbath. There was just not much you were allowed to do outside of the parameters and the rules they set. Those were man made, by the way. And so essentially, it's Sabbath. So from Friday night until sundown Saturday night is considered Sabbath, and they didn't do anything. And so here's Jesus and his boys walking through a field, plucking some grain, and instantly the Pharisees, jump on them about that. Well, there's a couple observations about it. The thing is with Jews and the Sabbath and all their rules, I got to just at least appreciate a couple things here. Number one was their reverence for God. Like even these Pharisees, as misguided and as villains as they get portrayed to be, they had such a deep reverence for God. And I think that's something that maybe we've lost to some degree. I think there's some of us that do have a reverence, but I know there's times where I get lazy in my relationship with the Lord. And so nothing wrong with a little bit of reverence. Obviously, they take it way too far. The other thing is Sabbath. Naturally, a lot of Jesus's challenges from the Pharisees and others is in regards to the Sabbath. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about what that looks like in the coming weeks. But at the end of the day, like God created Sabbath for us. And there's something special about a Sabbath. In fact, I've been reading a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, and has a whole chapter dedicated to Sabbath and our need for Sabbath. Now, naturally, we don't need to take Sabbath like they did back then. That's way too man-made. But it's okay to rest. Like napping can be holy. Like you should try it sometime. It's fun. Take a nap. Whether it be on a Sunday, a Saturday, whatever, pick your day, but take a nap. Because you know what? I believe that napping honors God just as much as reading a Bible. Because the beauty about Sabbath? Here's the thing about Sabbath that I love. It's God created, number one. And number two, while you're taking Sabbath, guess what? The world's still working. The world's still moving. Things are still happening. It's not relying upon you. Look, I think we are oftentimes, and thanks to technology and cell phones, we're working nonstop. We're always on. We're always working. And I think the effects and the impact on our lives and our health is drastic. Anxiety, stress. We're always in perpetual motion. I know for me, one of the struggles I face is I find my value in how much work I get done. And so I struggle with relaxing. I struggle with resting. And what God is saying is chill out, man. It's okay to take a nap. Take a day of rest. And so this has honestly been a journey I've been on trying to do a Sabbath in my life, or something that resembles a Sabbath. And so for me, when I was a pastor in the local church, my Saturdays and Sundays were toast. They revolved around a church building. So Fridays we tried to Sabbath. The problem is Fridays we filled our day up with grocery shopping and cleaning the house, mowing the yard, all the chores, where it wasn't a day of rest. And so now I'm looking at how do I reframe my life, or especially around the IndyCar schedule. I know busy times are coming. How do I factor in and schedule in times of rest? And so I say that to say, I think for you and for me, I think God, we serve a God that's amazing. That God gives us peace and rest. Take it. Take it. It's okay. Napping is holy. Napping is holy. And so don't be a Pharisee. Don't be a Pharisee. Don't be over anal about your Sabbath and you can only do X, Y, and Z. Try a couple hours a week. Try a few hours a week. Put your phone in another room. Try do something different. But Sabbath is very much good for you and for me, and God appointed it. Let's just not abuse it and jack it all up like the Pharisees did. Anyway, y'all, thanks for spending a few minutes. We'll see you back next week.